Hey team, we are officially live on Facebook. Happy Thursday, happy May. The weather is getting nicer. I'm really excited that it's finally nice out. So happy Thursday, and I am calling this meeting to order on this evening at 7:04 p.m. Let's begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. Join me in unmuting yourselves and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America, and to the republic
which it stands, one
nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to remind those watching at home, we are providing translation. Para los que están viendo la reunión de la casa, nosotros estamos proveyendo traducción de esta reunión y el número del Zoom está debajo al final de esta agenda.
Roll call,
Veronica,
please.
may we please have a roll call attendance?
Yes. Roll call for attendance. Ms. Enriquez?
present,
Ms. Santiago?
Present.
Mr. Jimenez? Ms.
Sorry, Mr. Jimenez is running a few minutes behind, but he should be joining us momentarily.
Okay. Ms. Alfaro?
Present.
Ms. Hernandez?
Present.
Ms. Garcia Mirza? Ms.
Present.
Mr. Wilson?
present,
Ms. Carlisle? Ms. Carlisle?
Present.
And Ms. Velez is absent, so that's 7 in the affirmative and 2 absent. I will note when Mr. Jimenez comes in.
Great, thank you so much, Veronica. Team, I do have a message from our city councilor, Mr. Robinson. He regrets to inform us that he will not be in attendance tonight. He will be celebrating the announcement that his daughter, Lucia Robinson Griggs, has been named the head basketball coach for MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Congratulations to Mr. Robinson. Alrighty, with that, team, I will now turn it over to our, my apologies, sorry, we're number 3. Do I have a motion to approve of the minutes from the regular meeting on April 15th?
I make a motion to accept it.
second,
Awesome, thank you. Veronica, do we have public comments tonight?
Yes, I have one person who's joined, Catherine Anderson.
Great, Catherine, I see you're here. Welcome. Please state your full name, your address, and your
Good evening, school committee members, central office, and the Chelsea community. My name is Catherine Anderson. I live at 15 Powderhouse Terrace, number 3 in Somerville. I'm a 7th and 8th grade special education liaison at the Brown Middle School, and I'm the VP of the Chelsea Teachers Union. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Dawn Debenigno, our president, who couldn't make it this evening, and the members of our executive board. I'm here to speak in follow-up to the letter submitted to the school committee earlier this week regarding the district's pool testing protocol. We, the executive board members of the Chelsea Teachers Union, are writing to you to express our alarm over the fact that COVID-19 pool testing was halted for 2 weeks without prior notification, just as the majority of our middle school students were returning to buildings and soon after our elementary students returned. As educators, we understand that this has been a year of learning and adapting to change, but this decision to stop testing was not made in a moment of crisis and should have been shared widely ahead of time. Throughout the pandemic, the Chelsea Public Schools and the Chelsea Teachers Union have highlighted the importance of health and safety for our staff, students, and community. The building blocks for a safe return to school for all have been clear: vaccinations, ventilation, PPE, social distancing, testing, and contact tracing. Our membership overwhelmingly ratified the school reopening MOA based on these building blocks and because they trusted that the district would uphold what was agreed upon. The unexpected cessation of pool testing and the lack of communication have shaken that trust. We understand that there's a plan in place to begin working with a new testing provider. This new plan involves students bringing their own samples to school, which raises concerns around consistency and reliability of data. Adding a minor to the chain of custody of important medical information does not make the flow of information more reliable. Our primary concern at the moment is the safety of our students and our members. The union has worked diligently and in good faith to be partners in reopening school buildings. We expect the district administration to do the same. We seek assurance that any further changes in testing be communicated to union leadership before those changes go into effect and that all tenets of the school reopening MOA be upheld. We cannot work successfully if we cannot work together. And lastly, I want to add a few words of my own. As we've learned more about the new testing protocol over the last 24 hours, I urge the school committee to ask serious questions tonight about the feasibility of this new system and to match this with the reasoning given behind the switch. Families will need to have a camera phone, internet access, digital literacy, and the time to take and properly label their children's samples each week. Please ask if this is the best we can do for our children and community safety. Ask if our nurses can support testing in school to make sure samples are collected with fidelity and consistency. Ask if our family liaisons have been given training in explaining this new procedure to our families, and if our clerks have been given training to answer the many questions sure to come from families vying to keep their loved ones safe. Ask if our educators collectively asked for this change in testing protocol to trade 10 to 15 minutes of learning time each week for this uncertainty about an issue of safety. How can we make sure we test a representative sample of our school community moving forward to help keep everyone safe? As we've been saying throughout the pandemic, we want to see our kids in person, when and in a manner that is safe. I've missed my students passionately since March 12th of 2020, and I look forward to the day when I can truly be excited to see them in person. But with such a faulty brick in the foundation of our safe learning environment, each day at school now, I worry that COVID is silently spreading through our community. Please make sure our testing and contact tracing approach moving forward help all of us to focus on the joys of learning and being in community with each other. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Catherine.
Madam Chair,
Is there?
can I just chime in? I just want to make sure the
Yes.
record reflects that I am present in the meeting. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Good
You
evening.
got a thumbs up from Veronica. Good evening. Thank you for joining us, Roberto. All righty. Veronica, do we have any more public comment submissions for tonight?
No, I don't have anyone else that joined.
Great, thank you. That closes our public comment section for tonight's meeting. I will now turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Beta.
Good evening, Chairwoman Garcia and members of the school committee. Thank you so much for all your support during this pandemic and during this time. And I just want to say we're so grateful that we've been able to open our elementary schools and middle schools successfully. And right now, our students are enjoying in-person learning 5 days a week. We completely skipped hybrid, and from what we hear from our teachers and our staff that are in person, they are excited to be back, excited to see students, and it's just been extremely joyous to have our students back. And so in light of that, as we plan for the future, in light of still being in a pandemic, we have to think about what school is going to look like in the fall. And so part of that is anticipating, are we still going to be 3 feet socially distanced? Or what are going to be the requirements? Where are we going to be with this pandemic? And those are all unknown to us. So in light of that, the Department of Education has laid out some, they made a statement saying that their expectation is that all students will be in school full-time in the fall. And that remote learning will no longer be counted as time on learning. And so in order to really meet the needs of our community, I feel it is important that we look at applying for an application to do a Chelsea virtual school. And this would actually be a school, because I do believe with 50% of our families still opting not to come back, that some of our families in the fall will still not be ready to come back. And we need to provide an education to our students. So therefore, I am going to go through a very brief presentation of what we are calling the Chelsea Virtual School, CVS. And so I'll go ahead and start there, but I just wanted to lay some groundwork first. So our agenda is just give you a background and then the need, and then meeting the need of various learners, and then a timeline, next steps, and question. So the background, again, and I said it earlier, in the fall of 2021, the Department of Ed is expecting a full in-person return to school. Some students and families may continue to seek virtual options or want virtual options in Chelsea. And therefore, they're allowing districts are permitted to establish single district virtual schools. It's a public virtual school that only enrolls students who reside in the school district operating the school. So this school would only take Chelsea students. And the school district who proposes virtual schooling would propose basically a new school. So the need for a virtual school in Chelsea, again, right now, overall, about 50% of our families are choosing in-person learning. So when we sent out the survey, students have come back, 50% of our students are in person 5 days a week and learning, and 50% are still remote. At the same time, we're continuing to feed our students in remote with our food meal sites, and families are still continuing, and as they have during this entire pandemic remotely. We're estimating that the need for virtual learning will still be 10% or greater probably in Chelsea. And that's unique. It's unique to Chelsea. We're a unique community because of the way the pandemic has hit us. And so we have to start thinking about how are we preparing for next year or next fall. So what excites me most about a virtual learning school is really being able to also meet the needs of many of our students. What we found in this pandemic is that many students thrived in the remote learning setting. So a virtual school can help us meet the needs of students with medical needs, meet the needs of students who have been expelled for long periods of time. It can also help us meet the needs of students who are pregnant or have children, students who seek academic work that's not available in their school, for students who are gifted and talented and maybe want a class that's not being offered, students with social and emotional needs that it takes, that may make it difficult for them to attend school in person, and also students who may feel bullied when they come to school. So a virtual option might be a great option for students. So in the long term, our plan would be to continue with a virtual school and to always have a virtual school. And really, we're just gonna have more options for the different learners that we do have in Chelsea. So the timeline for the virtual school is May 6th. There was an initial submission to the Department of Ed saying, hey, we'd be interested in this. And then the department is going to review an initial application of interest. Then in June, the Department of Education will give the school district feedback. And there has to be a school committee vote to say, yes, we would like to have a virtual school. And then we would submit more information as we evolve. And then in July would include feedback from a second round from DESE. So the next steps or we would survey families and assess the needs for the fall. Let's get a pulse of what our families are saying right now. Will they send their children back to school or not? Amend the application according to the Department of Education feedback. And then there would be a school committee vote in June. And then we would look to hire a principal and a small team to lead this work. And so I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Dr. Abeda, I have a quick question. Will this school be on the list of schools that families choose from this summer? Like on the application?
We would have
page.
We would have to work really hard, fast to get it on the list, and I think that's why DESI's deadline is June and July. So we're hoping that it'll be on there quick enough so parents can choose it as an option. And part of the urgency on our part is we recognize that with 50% of our families still not choosing in-person learning, that we'll probably still have a good amount of families that may want to keep their children home.
Dr. Aveda, question I have is, this virtual school, will it be for all grades or just for the cases that you mentioned about bullied and people, young kids with children and all that good stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Member Wilson. Yes, this would be for a start, the first couple years as we're still getting through this pandemic. The intent is to have it be K through 12, and then we would reassess in a couple of years and see if we still want it at the elementary grades. But for sure, our plan would be to keep it grades 6 through 12.
And it will DESI be financing this the school as well? Will we have a location for the school building?
Because the school is virtual, there is no location. The administrators, I'm sure, would probably could be virtual or could be located somewhere. The Department of Ed, the way we are funded is by students. So the school, essentially, we have our own school. It has its own funding connected to it by student enrollment.
Okay.
But to hold it over for the start, we have set aside SR2 funds for remote learning. And so this would definitely be covered under the SR2 funds.
Okay.
And supplemented.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bader.
You're welcome.
Dr. Beda, we have two hands. I saw Mr. Jimenez, then Ms. Santiago, and then Ms. Carlisle.
Yeah, my question was around the staffing for this and how that would work. Sorry, I heard you mention a principal, and I missed the second part of that. And I'm just curious, like, would the educators participating in this also be CPS educators, and would they also be teaching in person, that kind of thing? Could you just explain more how the staffing model will work?
Yeah, that's something that we had to think through when we filled out an initial application, and it's not final, but our intent is to have dedicated teachers dedicated solely to the virtual school. Chelsea Public School teachers, we're not planning to outsource. They would be Chelsea Public School teachers that are fully licensed for the content that they are teaching.
And would they be specific to this, or would they be also educators who are working in our in our current schools?
Our goal is not to have them hybrid, and it might be maybe if it's specialists or something, and depending on the need, that it's a 0.5 specialist in the virtual school, and maybe we do 0.5 specialists, let's say, at a middle school. But the intent is to really have the virtual school as much as possible have its own staff and full FTE.
And sorry, so then would we be hiring these additional staff or moving people around to fill the staff?
Either people could we would post the positions as we normally do. And if a teacher is interested in teaching virtually that's currently teaching in Chelsea, they could apply as they would for any other position. I'm sure we would create, depending on the need, we would determine the FTE. And so it might be, it depends again on the need. And the nice thing about virtual school is you can really diversify. So we just have to wait and see, like right now, where our next step would be we're gonna send out a survey and see what our parents are saying. Where are our parents now in terms of the pandemic? Are they feeling more comfortable? Do they want to send their children back to school in the fall? With 50% still opting out, I'm sure it might be that maybe 20% say, you know what, I still want my child to learn virtually. So we want to provide some options for those families that still feel like they want to keep their children home. And for those where what we learned through this entire pandemic is that remote learning was actually great for some students. And so those students may say, I like remote learning, I want to stay and continue with virtual learning.
Yeah, just a final comment, and we can go to Ms. Santiago. Just when we kind of do that survey, if we could just, I think it would be important to ask families if they would feel differently if their children can get vaccinated by that point. So I think, somebody might feel very differently if their 10-year-old is vaccinated in the fall versus if not. But, I know that depends on factors outside of our control, but it would be good to at least have that data so that we know how things might shift. Thank you.
Thank you. I know there were some more questions.
Ms. Santiago, are you ready for your question?
Yeah, I was scanning. I'm on a different device today. Thank you. So yeah, I'm just again really upset with Governor Baker's administration and DESE's behavior around all of this and the lack of support that Chelsea has received. To think that students like my own daughter, who's currently remote, and all the great work that she's done, along with all the other students that are doing great work online, that's been demonstrated, that this would not count, and that Chelsea therefore has to create a whole new school by June. So I just want people to understand what's been asked of us, and what's being asked of our districts, because it's just horrifying. So Dr. Albeida, did you say that this virtual school would be for grades 6 through 12 only?
No. Member Santiago, the virtual school would be K through 12 right now for the first couple of years as we're still in this pandemic. And then we would reassess we'd reassess and go from there. The research is showing us that our secondary school students are actually, with learning virtually, is actually really good options for many of our students. Little ones, it's a little bit more complicated, but for the first couple of years while we're in the middle, still in this pandemic, it would be K through 12.
Okay, great. That would definitely, I was thinking about a large chunk of kids. And so I'm glad that it's the whole district, and that's a lot of work. Thank you for the clarification on that. And then, the other thing that's come up, I think that's been really important that I've been hearing from families and throughout this process as we started to be forced to open schools and skip the hybrid, is the transportation. I guess what I've seen is that we've been so lenient and so understanding that there's been changes, whether a parent decides that they want to send their student or they want to keep their student home, understandably, to each their own reasons. In terms of the virtual school, and to Kelly's point about having this as an option in a survey for the summer, will there be a sort of like deadline in order for families to decide? And does that have to be known by June before we go to DESE with the proposal? or do we have some leeway in terms of parents knowing for sure and checking that box when they make the choice?
Yeah, I think the deadline would be a district proposed deadline and something that we would have to work through with our families because as you said earlier, it is May and we have to move very quickly to get this started. And so we have to think very thoughtfully about the curriculum, which thankfully we've been doing this for almost an entire year. And so we're very confident that we can continue the great work that we've already started. But in light of that, you know, we still have to get a survey out, we have to assess, and then we would probably start taking signups just like we did for the remote option. And we'd have to say to our families, would you like to still continue in a virtual school? We're going to offer this, and we get that. So we'd have to be flexible with families. We're under the gun to get this up and running, and we want it to be very successful. So we will work very fast and furious to make sure that it is successful, and we will provide as much flexibility to families as we can, because we want to make sure that families feel if they're coming in person, that is great. And if they're still not comfortable, that's fine too. But we just want to make sure as a school system that we are providing that option still.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Carlisle.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Superintendent. I know you're working very hard with Desi and the state and everything, and I know the difficulties you're going through to make sure everything's right for the students and the teachers. I recently had a chance to visit the schools to see what it was like in-house. And I can say the teachers feel safe, the students look safe, and the administrators are very happy with their teachers that are in-house. So I just want to make that known. What the state and Desi does, and we have to do, is to make sure that it continues to stay safe for the students and the teachers. My problem is the day is going to come when we need to get everybody back in school. And I don't think it's ever going to be normal for at least 2 or 3 years now. And we have to look down the road to make sure that we have it safe enough for the students and to be back in the classroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Carlisle. Any other questions or comments from the school committee regarding our virtual school?
I just want to quickly, Dr. Beta, you mentioned that we had submitted an initial plan, and then there's going to be another plan that needs to be submitted. Will that happen prior to our vote or after?
Let me go back to, I'm gonna go back. Correct, yeah, can you see that? Let's see, I wanna go back to the timeline for you. Okay, so we submitted just an initial submission of interest right now, kind of like almost like a rough draft of, yes, we're interested, here's what we're thinking. The department is gonna provide us feedback, and I'm sure it'll be a lot. And then we'll receive the feedback in June. So it might be that if we haven't received the feedback by June 3rd to work on it, which is our last school committee meeting for the year, then it might be that we may just have to call a special school committee meeting just for this. I don't know if we're gonna have a feedback in time to have a full, so you can have all of the information and all transparency. So it might be that we have to call a special meeting just for this vote, and I apologize for that. I just don't know if the timeline is gonna work for a June 3rd vote. I'll keep you posted though. And then the final initial application, because Desi needs to have a school committee to say yes or no or approve it, then the final application with school committee approval is due in July.
Got it. I would be great if we could get a copy of what was submitted to Desi. I would love to just look it through, and when we get that feedback, I'd love to take a look as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I would Sorry, Ms. Chairwoman, if I may ask a follow-up question.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a little lag on this side, so I don't, forgive me, guys. Is it possible, I guess this is not a decision that we need to make right now, and I'm not going to request a formal, I'm not going to request it formally from our school committee right now, but it's something to think about whether we would need that meeting prior, if it's worth having a subcommittee of the whole to really dive into the data, to support the planning and the final decisions that, prior to a whole vote. That might be helpful to consider. I know that a lot of us try to read all the documents that are sent in advance, especially when they're lengthy ones. I would just want us to think about that, if there's a space for us to actually come together before taking a final vote to approve something that's sent to DESE, in terms of, the speed and this timeline for approval. So just something for us to consider that I think might be helpful if need be.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Santiago. Any other questions? Great. I believe what's next on the agenda is Ms. Kent's presentation on our school updates.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah. Ms. Kent, you're on.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here with our monthly indicators of success. This month, we have our monthly indicators, our quarterly updates, and then our appendix that we always have. So moving to page 3. With our attendance rate, you will see that as a district, year to date, we have an attendance rate of 91.1%. And I will say that now for the month of April, this column here represents both attendance virtually and in person combined. Okay, so this includes all students, whether they came online to class or they came physically to class. You'll see that we are hitting our target in grades 3 and 4, and we're very close, K to 9, and we are still working hard in 10 through 12. Just so for some perspective, a year ago at this time, we were at 92%. And 2 years ago at this time, we were almost at 93. So we are still in range, considering all that we're going through and all that kids are doing to come to school. And if you turn to page 4, we have our quarter 3 grades for grade 4. Just a reminder that we're asking for 3 or better. There are 4 possible grades, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this data shows you the top 2 grades. In general, just to say, in reading, writing, and math, we are about 10% below where we were last year and the year before at this time. Science is holding steady from where it has been in the past. We're working hard to get those, get kids to mastery. But with all the transition and things that's happening, it's a little touchy. On page 5, we have 8th grade. There we go. Sorry. There we go. We have 8th grade, and you will see that we have been pretty equal from where we have been in the past. Our writing scores are actually higher than they have been for a while, but our ELA scores are the ones that are showing a dip due to the pandemic. We are about 15 points below in ELA where we were 2 years ago in Q3 in grade 8. We're working hard now that we're back in person. Librarians are working hard to get books into the hands of kids. We're also continuing with all that, the reading instruction as best we can. On page 6, good news is we had only, we have 43 students who have dropped out, and that's only one more this month than the prior month. And just as a comparison, 2 years ago at this time, we had 99. So we have about half as many dropouts as we did 2 years ago, trying to not compare us during the pandemic. As you can see in the table below, though, they tell you this every month, but it's our L students that are dropping out most frequently, as you can see from this table here. There are details about the student who dropped out on page 7. It was an L student in grade 12, and we do not know the plans of that student. And then on page, we move all the way to page 10 on mobility. You'll see that overall, we've had about 1,000 students come or go during this year. And in April, we have gained 14 students. We're starting to see enrollment increase slightly. Overall, our percentage of change is 16%. 2 years ago at this time, it was 22%. So as we've talked about many times, you know, the mobility rate of students has been affected by the health crisis. On page 10, the final page, we have the high school grades. You can see in 9th grade, we have 45% of students who have failed one or more courses. You'll see that, unfortunately, the number of kids who failed 4 have increased a bit, as well as 3. Numbers failing 1, though, however, have dropped, 1 and 2. Good news is in grade 10, proud to report that 12% less students. So we had been hovering in the 57. We've managed to bring that down to 46. Not that we're proud of 46, we still have a long way to go, but we are going in the right direction. And the best part is that there are 60 students who were failing 3 or 4 grades that are not now, right? So we had a lot more students failing 3 or 4 courses, and that's been drastically cut. That's been through a lot of work on the team up at the high school. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Mr. Jimenez?
I just had a quick question. I was just thinking around the failing grades and all that. You know, seeing as we have so many students who are, you know, recent arrivals, who are still kind of all lumped into this data, I'm curious if, you know, do we also look at kind of breaking that down between kind of how long a student has been in our district, and like, do you know, or maybe if you don't, if we could just know maybe at some point whether how those numbers might look differently. Curious, you know, just thinking that, like, you know, students who have been here longer probably have like more stability and are probably succeeding at a higher rate. So I'm just curious about that.
Go ahead, Ms. Kent.
Okay, so I will, yes, your logic sounds very true. Unfortunately, we are held accountable for whoever fails. You know, we want all kids to succeed. So yes, we could pull that data apart. I believe your hypothesis would play out. But that's also where the bridge program comes in, right? So we do have a program designed to support English language learners in their content courses, which is slowly released. You know, they slowly release into the mainstream courses. We could pull it apart lots of different ways, and we do. But I don't have a big number for you. I'm sorry.
No, that's totally okay. And you know, when you say that we're held accountable, you mean by DESE, right?
Yeah, and just
I agree. Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, you know, and I do want all of our students to succeed, right? But it is also far more challenging for us to, you know, expect our work to help our students succeed who just arrived a month ago versus, you know, so we are going to help all of our students, right? But you know, just to make sure that we have an understanding of how students are performing, kind of in that way, I think is helpful. And yeah.
I will say though, just we do have an option of no grade. So if a student arrived 2 weeks ago before grades closed and they haven't really engaged in the course yet, et cetera, we do have that option as well, which is not a failure. So the kid who walked in yesterday and grades closed, don't fail, right? I'm just, you know, there are options for teachers to have kids, you know, and there's also incompletes that like they just need to do one thing and they'll be fine. And, you know, we do have some grading options.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Ms. Santiago?
Thank you, Ms. Kent, for sharing all the information. I always look forward to hearing this report. And I really appreciate that we have the opportunity for our families that are watching or that are hearing to show that, you know, this virtual program has actually provided a lot more consistency and has resulted in way more benefits that I think all of us might have otherwise thought possible. And I'm really, really grateful for the work that this district has done to making that happen. I think, like I said in the beginning, we were going to learn a lot. And I'm really grateful that we have like concrete data that's showing, you know, that this is an option for students, depending on whatever their situation is at the time and whether that's a particular grade or not, and what their learning needs are. So I'm really grateful to all of you for providing that path. And then forgive me, I tried to absorb all this information and refer to the sheets as best as possible. But what I have been hearing from other cities is that we are seeing again, you know, a number of new students arriving per week. We're seeing like a jump. And I was just, you know, I was sharing with a friend from a neighboring town, not part of our 5DP, but pretty much our next neighbor over, that, you know, they are too as well, the district seeing a very large immigrant community like ours, specifically seeing an increase. So, you know, it's something that I'm really excited about, that, you know, that our home and that our town is welcoming and continues to be welcoming for every student, no matter where they come from. It's to be honored and celebrated. But equally, I guess, sort of like where Roberta was saying, like, how are we also just taking note of what we're seeing now? Is this a trend that's going to continue, that we can also take that into account in our planning and our budgeting in the next few years? Because it is important to know that, you know, when families do choose a town to come to, it's often because they have community here, they have family, or they have friends, and that is going to be more indicative, you know, to their success as students. So just grateful for the reporting, grateful for the work that's been done.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Santiago.
Okay, so Chairwoman Garcia, I'll move on to the COVID-19 update. And I do have two updates. One is just as I've communicated via email to our school committee, but I'm going to share a little bit more about our COVID testing. And so thus far, we have administered 600 COVID tests. We are currently in the process, as you heard earlier, switching vendors for our pool testing program. And we're doing this to improve efficiencies. And when I say efficiencies, in our previous program, there was reflex testing, and the reflex testing was very complex and required a lot of the people who had to get second tests. So with the current provider, on the current vendor, we're moving over to Veritas Genetics, and this will use a saliva sample. It'll actually provide more rapid reflex testing for us, so that way we can be more efficient and save more time. And that way we're not spending as much time COVID testing, and saving on teaching and learning time, really. So we are improving the process, if you will, because with so many kids coming back, the reflex testing in our old program would take a lot of time and resources that we currently thought it would be wiser to pause and let's get a better vendor that can be more efficient. So that was the reason why there was an interrupt in the flow of testing. And according to DESE, we couldn't have two vendors at the same time to do an overlap. So we had to stop one program and then go with the next. So our goal that our new program will be up and running on May 10th. And we have apologized for the gap in testing, but we are also confident that this shift is going to improve COVID testing for all. And I want to publicly thank our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Adam Delaney, for his hard work on this, because he has spent many hours putting this together, as well as many hours in Thursday evening calls with the Safer Students, Safer Teachers Coalition on Thursday evenings, often after school committee meetings from 8 to 10, and just learning more about the most efficient COVID testing strategies. So I just want to stop and say thank you to Mr. Assistant Superintendent Adam Delaney for his hard work in this endeavor and getting this off the ground. And I want to thank our nurses who have been diligently COVID testing for the last 6 weeks. And again, we apologize that there's been a pause, and the pause is only to improve the efficiencies of the testing, because we want a better product and we want to save time on teaching and learning. The second update I have is regarding food in our schools. And so now that our students are returning to classrooms across the district, meals continue to be available for pickup for our students in remote learning from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And at the same time, our cafeterias are producing meals for students in school. Meals now, lunchtime was completely different because students are 6 feet apart. The meals have to be brought directly to classrooms and to school gyms and to other spaces where the students are eating in a socially distanced manner. And so to get us off the ground, those meals were cold meals because it was a lot of logistical work that needed to be happened. And now that we've got that system and process in place, we will be switching over to hot meals. With the middle schools being open, we have over 2,100 students receiving meals in our schools daily. And at about 2,500 are still being picked up outside each day. We are working to provide hot lunches to our students that are in person, and we will get there. Again, we expect to start offering hot meals at the lower grades next week, and we will expand this to middle grades shortly. I want to say thank you. I cannot say thank you enough to our unsung heroes, our meal service providers, and all of our operations staff who have worked tirelessly during this pandemic nonstop to provide meal services to our Chelsea community. During this pandemic, we provided well over 360,000 breakfasts and 360,000 lunches to the children in Chelsea. And we have done so, we have done so outdoors and in all weather conditions, including rain and snow, and including times when the COVID rates were extremely high. So I just wanted to say thank you for the hard work of our meal service workers and everyone that has had to support our meal service during this time. And that is it for my COVID-19 report and update. I don't know if we have any student reps tonight.
No, not this evening.
Okay, so I'll move on to our.
I have a couple of questions actually around the testing component. Is this an okay time to ask?
Go ahead, Mr. Jimenez.
Yeah, sorry, have the child here on my feet. I'm just curious, you mentioned that the switch had partially been, a resource issue, and also that we couldn't have two vendors at the same time. I'm just curious, was there any kind of conversation with Desi around, with wanting, us wanting to have a change? Sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, okay, it's okay. We wanted to have this change in vendor. Sorry, I'll be right back.
Shout out to parents who are currently multitasking on Zooms everywhere, and love to our little Roberto.
Definitely.
I wanted to
your way, Mr.
I just wanted to say thank you to, Roberto's back.
No, you can finish.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Delady for really going above and beyond and through the loops. We're doing something that is unprecedented again, and I'm just really grateful for your efforts. I'm really grateful that this district again showed leadership and really, putting out different ways for our families to have resources and the staff. I'll let Roberto ask his question. I think the communication piece seems like an opportunity. But I trust that, you're going to make decisions as you see fit sometimes. And, but I think the communication piece is always something that, we all have to be better about. But outside of that, I still recognize that, I certainly can't imagine running a pool testing site and have everything done perfectly and seamlessly, especially dealing with Desi, given what we all know about Desi. So just thank you, Adam, for your work and your diligence and for the team's efforts to making this possible.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. When you have a child that is learning to walk, he falls often. Apologies for that. Just want to. So my question was around. You mentioned that it was a resource issue, and I'm just curious. Was it more costly to have the other type of test? And just I'm curious, how Desi might be helping to cover this, and knowing that we were switching, would they have been open to having, an overlap of a week to make sure that we were covered? It seems as we're bringing more students into the district in person, kind of having a week without testing seems, a little not ideal. And I recognize that you've mentioned that it's not ideal, right? And I'm just trying to make sure that we, is this Desi just having a terrible policy on this where they wouldn't allow us to have overlap?
Mr. Member Roberto, I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Delady answer the question. But before I do, I also want to say that with more students coming in, their model that we had with the reflex testing was extremely complicated. And so there were other vendors that had a process that was a bit more efficient. But I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Delady because he has worked tirelessly on all the details and also working with Desi as well. So Mr. Delady, you can answer the questions.
Sure. So it's sort of a complicated answer, Roberto, but if you guys remember a ways back, prior to us getting into the Desi program, we were going to be doing testing anyway and using our ESSER funds to pay for it. We weren't supposed to qualify for the Desi program because we weren't in person. So we were researching, we were going to go into business with a company called Miramis, who had a similar program to what Veritas Genetics does. And then that would have cost us close to $1 million for the rest of the year to use Miramis. And then DESE realized that it wouldn't be prudent for them to not support Chelsea. So they let us into their program, even though we weren't in person quite yet. So we used their program. But I knew going in that the other program that we were looking at was superior. But they paid for it in full. So we were like, okay, let's do that then. But we knew it wasn't perfect and we knew it wasn't sustainable, but it was our best and most cost prudent option. But what we found is even without kids in the building, testing just the staff in the building and the limited number of students with complex and significant needs, it was basically on testing days, our school nurses were spending their entire day doing testing. Okay, now let's fast forward to kids coming in person. If the nurses are doing the testing, who's doing the nursing? And couple that with, even though we only have half our kids in the building, we're also seeing that kids are being sent to the nurse's office at a much higher rate, and rightfully so, because every time you see a runny nose or a cough or a sneeze, people are getting a little nervous, so they're sending kids to the nurse's office. So the nurses are actually busier than they normally are. Now couple that with the reflex testing that has to happen. We've done it only twice in the times that we've had. I was there for both of them. The first one took about 4 hours with 6 people doing it, just to reflex one pool of people, and that's without the kids back. So we were anticipating like, uh-oh, what's going to happen when we have 2,100 kids back in our buildings and we get positive tests? How are we going to be able to conduct this? So now the Wednesday before April vacation, DESE announced that they would continue to pay for the pool testing through the end of the summer, which we were very happy for. And they announced a new vendor that we would be able to switch to. So on that Wednesday before the vacation, they said, here's a new vendor. They gave us very little information. And they said, if you want to switch vendors, we need to know by Friday. So we basically had 1 day to research and then make a decision. So we did that. We met with Veritas. Their CEO actually sat with our health office staff. We had lots of questions for them. We had lots of demands for them. And they said, if we're going to switch, these are all the things we want in place. And they had everything that Miramis had, including the reflex testing happening at the lab. It's more of a grab and go. So the kids are basically producing their saliva at home, putting it in a tube, bringing it to school, dropping it off. And I think for me, the most important part, when we did our reflex testing at one of the schools, one of the teachers was in the pool and we had to bring her down. And I watched the emotional reaction of this teacher as she knew her kids were upstairs learning while she was down there getting tested. She was an emotional wreck. She ended up testing negative, but it was a really terrible experience for her. So with this, none of that happens. It all happens at the lab. The only thing we find out is here's the name of the person who's positive. So then we can go back doing the contact tracing that we've been doing. So going into the decision, as I said, we only had 1 day to make that decision. We were hoping that we would get our decision before the vacation started, or at least during the vacation, which would have allowed us, I was hoping that we would have the vacation, the April vacation, to get the planning done and get the onboarding done. But we didn't find out that we were approved to switch until Monday after vacation. And at that point, that was when CIC, our previous vendor, cut ties with us. So we weren't able to work with them anymore because they knew that we were switching over to Veritas. So it happened very quickly. We only had 1 day. But I will say that even if we knew that it would result in 2 weeks of testing, which is really just 2 days of testing, I want to make that clear. We test once a week. So it's really just 2 tests that didn't happen. And our student percentage in the testing was fairly low anyway. Only about 25% of our kids were involved in the testing. So the reality is, if I were asked again, I would say it's worth it to do this. Of course, it remains to be seen because we haven't done We haven't done it yet. We're going to be trying it out Tuesday and seeing how it works. But if it works the way it's supposed to work, I will tell you it's far superior than the previous vendor. And one final thought that I think outside of the, not losing the learning time with the testing and the reflex testing is the fact that the reflex testing that we're doing was a rapid antigen test called Binex Now. And that has, the research has shown that for asymptomatic children, it was 70% accurate. So I don't know how you guys feel around 70% accuracy, but now our reflex testing is 100% accurate. And to me, that is a world of difference. And it's not just the capacity. And we've also heard a little bit about the technology. The reality is it's really, really easy for the families to do. And if kids are having trouble, they can bring their kid in. They can do it in the nurse's office. It doesn't have to happen at home. It can certainly happen at school. So with all those factors, I feel like we're making the right decision. And I think, if we still have people who need to learn a little bit more about it and experience it. And I'm fully confident that after we've gone through a week or two, I think people are going to see the value.
Thank you. I just want to quickly say, nothing on you all. I think that on the DESE side, if we had access to this better vendor prior, maybe they should have gone with that. I don't want to sound conspiracy theory, but we kind of started, 2 weeks into us starting, right? We kind of stop everything, which is roughly the timeline when we might see cases start to pop up. It really, it really does feel like in some way that, DESE was trying to create a pause so that then, numbers look better. I don't know. It just, they should have created a process by which we could have not had that week missing. Nothing we could do on our end, but, just once again, showing that DESE can and should do better. Anyway, thank you.
I just want to say thank you to the hard work of our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Delaney, because he has spent so much time on this, and the nursing staff as well. It's been a gargantuan task to get this off the ground, and then to have to switch with as he said, 1 day notice, and so it's just been huge. So Adam, want to say thank you.
Yeah, and can I ask a last follow-up question, very brief one? For the students that do go into the school and are participating in the pool testing, rather with this shift, Adam, did I hear correctly that folks would need a digital device in order to bring this, to the school? Hearing you loud and clear that if a family has a need, communicate that directly to the school, and thank you for saying nurses' offices are open, so that if students and families want to participate, is this new vendor in terms of what the students and families need to do on their end drastically different, or is there just a couple of additional steps that is making the efficiency better? As I would land with, what supports do families need? Do we need some type of communication? Could we have some type of memo, or maybe a flyer that looks friendly, easy to follow with some steps for families, that we could post on our page or our website? Or is that stuff that, local principals, individual schools can do based on, if there's a need for that? But I guess that's where I was sort of going with that, if there's a significant difference.
Yeah, so I will say our vendor actually did the bulk of the work on that, and that was part of our meeting prior to the vacation. We said, listen, we're going to need instructional videos. We're going to need consent forms. We're going to need things in Spanish. We're going to need one-pagers. And they did do a really good job. I gave them some feedback today. We got our communication package from them late last night. I spent the morning going through it and gave them some feedback and asked for a couple of other things. Like, for example, for the staff enrollment piece, they asked for gender and only asked if male or female. So I asked for a non-binary option. One of the bits wasn't translated into Spanish. So I said, I can't send this out to families if it's not translated. So I actually have a meeting again with them tomorrow. But in terms of the actual process, I can describe it. And so I think For probably 99% of our families, this is going to be an extremely easy process. I've modeled it myself, I've practiced it. It's pretty easy. So what happens is every kid's gonna go home with the test kit, which will involve a tube. Well, it's in a Ziploc baggie with a tube, a cap, and a funnel. And on that tube is a barcode. So all they have to do is open up the camera on their phone and hold it over the barcode, and that will automatically take them to a quick little bit where all you have to do is enter your date of birth and your name. That's it, and you hit enter. And then what you do is you drop your saliva into the tube using the funnel, put the cap on, zip it back into the bag, and bring it to school. Now, if the technology part of just holding the camera open, or if somebody doesn't have a phone, they can simply bring it into school and the nurse can do that part for them. It's really, really easy. I don't think it might be a barrier for less than 1% of our kids, and we're prepared to support that, any percentage of kids where it's difficult for them to do. But the reality is they can, as long as they're enrolled and the consent form's filled out, they can just come in and provide the sample right then and there. But the thing is, we couldn't do that with 2,000 kids, but we can do it with a small percentage of kids who can't do that at home. So, you know, we're asking families to provide those samples in the morning or the night before. They could do it before they go to bed, throw it in their backpack, and then, you know, we'll have a little box in the classrooms where they drop them off and the nurses will come around and collect. Does that kind of give you a better picture of what the demand is on the families?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I will move on now. The next part of my report are the personnel updates. And then we move to I'm moving to enclosures. Okay, so here are our personnel changes for this month, and you can see we've had some new hires. You'll see most of them are classroom monitors and crossing guards, of course, since we started school, lunch monitors and nurses aides, and so you can see the needs, right, as we've opened school back up. Our demographic data are 35% Caucasian, 57% Hispanic, 4% Black, 4% Asian Pacific Islander. And then we've had a few resignations and then promotions and transfers. And then for school enrollment, you can see there is some increase. We had been pretty steady all throughout this year. And the last month or two, we've been gaining some students. We're a little over 6,000. And to member Marisol, you were talking about students coming in. We are experiencing some students coming in, mostly in the middle grades. And so we are preparing to receive, I don't know if you recall, but we lost about 200 students this year. Our English language learners, many of them did not come. So we're actually preparing to receive our students, and I'm imagining that we will go back up to our usual enrollment of about 6,200. And so we're slowly coming up right now again. So I would like to commend the personnel update to the report and enrollment report to the record. Okay, so that completes my reports, and then we'll move on to committee reports. So I don't, Ms. Hernandez, do you want to lead the committee report conversation? And we lost Kelly over internet.
Yeah, we lost Kelly in the connection. She had poor connection and she completely got booted out. So we're moving on to the committee reports. The budget and finance and enclosure D.
So I apologize. I'll go back to enclosures. Apologize. So this is enclosure D.
There it is, right? Okay. Okay, this was, the Budget and Finance Subcommittee, met on Thursday, April 29th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. In attendance were Superintendent Dr. Albeda, Chairwoman Mrs. Garcia Mercer, Budget and Finance Chair Mrs. Velez, Henry Wilson, Lucia Enriquez, and Executive Director of Finance, Monica Lomboy. The agenda, this is.
Do we need to make a motion to accept the minutes?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Ms. Hernandez, is that okay if we make a motion to accept the Budget and Finance Subcommittee minutes for our
Yes,
record?
please.
Second the motion.
Okay, we'll move those. Having the second motion, we'll move on then. I believe, I'm sorry, I was not prepared to take this on. Seeing no other committee reports, we'll move on to unfinished business. Seeing none, we will now move on to new business. First line is consideration and action to accept an increase of $16,950 in the gift from Harvard University for the placement of teaching fellows at Chelsea schools during fiscal year 2021. Item number 21SC39. Explanation: last August, the school committee accepted a gift of approximately $194,000 for the salaries of 8 Harvard teaching fellows for the current school year. Harvard University has since offered to fund the cost of the CPS mentors who support the fellows in the amount of $16,950. These funds will be added to the original gift for a total of $211,374. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 71, Section 37A, provides for the acceptance of gifts for educational purposes only with the approval of the Chelsea School Committee. Roll call, Veronica?
Consideration and action to accept an increase of $16,950 in the gift from Harvard University for the placement of teaching fellows at Chelsea FY21. Ms. Enriquez?
Yes.
Ms. Santiago?
Yes.
Mr. Jimenez?
Yes.
Ms. Alfaro? I think we lost her. Ms. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Carlisle?
Yes.
That's 6 in the affirmative and 3 absent.
It's an affirmative and 3 absent. The motion passes. Next, consideration and action to accept $472,802 for fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022 for the Executive Office of Education for the Pre-K through 3 Remote Learning Partnership Grant and to issue sub-grants to partner organizations Item number 21 SC 40. Explanation, the state has released grant funds to help school districts and partners coordinate support for students in pre-kindergarten to grade 3 whose schools were operating in hybrid or fully remote in January 2021. Chelsea Public Schools is the lead agency for this 2-year grant and will pass the funds to our partners who will provide programming to prevent learning loss, bolster social emotional skills development, and promote learning recovery. The grant partners are East Boston Social Centers, Jordan Boys and Girls Club, and For Kids Only. Massachusetts law, Chapter 71, Section 37A provides for the acceptance of grants for educational purposes only with the approval of Chelsea School Committee. Roll call, Veronica?
Consideration and action to accept $472,802 for FY21 and FY22 from the Executive Office of Education for the pre-K 3 through 3 remote learning subgrants to partner organizations. Ms. Enriquez?
Yes.
Ms. Santiago?
I'm voting yes, but I was wondering if after our roll call or if Ms. Limboy or Dr. Albeda can explain what the grant for partners, this grant for the partners will do. And my apologies to the committee because I wasn't part of that subcommittee, but that can happen after. It would be helpful. And yes, it's great.
Mr. Jimenez?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Carlisle?
Yes.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent. The motion passes.
And so what I'll do right now, since you just voted for it, I'll have Ms. Kent actually worked on the application. I did the first application with our partners, and then Ms. Kent worked on this application. So I'll have Ms. Kent share a little bit more about this one.
Sure. So this grant was offered by the state of Massachusetts to support after-school programming and out-of-school for places that have remote students. So we actually partnered with the 3 partners that are listed here: East Boston Social Centers, Jordan Boys and Girls Club, and For Kids Only. And it offered money from this past January, kind of retroactively, until June for fiscal year 21, as well as another year's worth of money. And the categories that they could ask for funding for included materials, professional development, planning and implementation, money for summer school, those kinds of things. So it was to support those agencies in supporting Chelsea kids.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All set? And thank you for that clarification. That was helpful. Moving on to the next one. Next is consideration and action to approve a budget transfer in the amount of $366,841 and the transitional relief for impact of change in low income measure porthole funding to move funds from facilities management to technology services. Item 21 SC 41. Explanation: in October 2019, the school committee authorized the acceptance of $366,841 in the transition relief for impact of change in low income measure porthole funding. In a prior budget transfer, the funds were dedicated towards lease and tenant improvement for a new space for the Chelsea Opportunities Academy in the intergenerational literacy program Regrettably, the district has not yet been able to identify a property to meet the needs of those programs. As a result, it is now recommended that the funds be transferred to technology services where they can be committed to computer hardware and software and other technology expenses in support of in-person remote learning. Roll call, Veronica?
Consideration and action to approve a budget transfer in the amount of $366,841 in transitional relief and for impact of change in low income measure pothole funding to move funds from facility management to technology services. Ms. Enriquez,
Yes.
Santiago,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Oh, sorry, did you call my name?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you call my name. Yes, and really unfortunate. I really hope that we can find a place for COA at some point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Carlisle,
Yes.
that's 6 in the affirmative and 3 absent.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent. Motion passes. We'll move on to the next. Consideration and action to authorize the prepayment of up to $1.5 million in special education out-of-district tuition fees to the SEAM Collaborative and/or Shore Collaborative for fiscal year 2022, item number 21, SC 42. Explanation: Massachusetts state law allows school districts to prepay special education tuition using current year dollars to pay for future year tuition costs. In June 2020, the school committee authorized the prepayment of $1 million in tuition to SEAM Collaborative using savings that were generated that year. Careful management of tuition and other special education expenses during the current school year is expected to generate approximately $1.5 million in savings. It is recommended that the school committee approve the prepayment of up to $1.5 million to SEAM Collaborative and/or Shore Collaborative to take advantage of the savings that exist in the current year budget. Roll call, Veronica?
Consideration and action to authorize the prepayment of up to $1.5 million in special education out-of-district tuition fees to the SEAM Collaborative and/or Shore Collaborative for FY22. Ms. Enriquez,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
I have a small question before voting. And forgive me, guys. I know we have a lot of questions tonight. I appreciate it. But I think we need to attend the next budget subcommittee next time. I think that, one of the things that I appreciate is that we get to hear from every school. And, I know in our reports, we don't often hear enough about the North Shore Collaborative. And it's a very important part of our district. And so I know that we have a representative. I know that there's meetings. I would just, I am voting yes for this because our students need it, of course, without a question. But I just think it's every single meeting I leave sort of, regretting that I didn't ask more follow-up questions about this. But I would love to hear more, a report or an update about them and how our students are doing there as well in the future, maybe for the next meeting or in another space, which it might be helpful. But I think it's important. But yes to this particular vote. I just wanted to lift that.
back to roll call. Mr. Jimenez,
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent. Motion passes. We move on to the next. Consideration and action to approve a budget transfer from multiple departments to facilities and transportation for fiscal year 2021, item number 21 SC 43. Explanation: savings are available in benefit and payroll adjustments due mostly to savings in employee and retirement health insurance. Salary savings at schools have been calculated based upon current staffing. However, since the district continues to hire short-term staff to support in-person learning and certain accounts are only used when students are present, this budget transfer is asking that the school committee authorize transfers in amounts not to exceed. This will provide central office with flexibility to transfer funds as the end of the school year approaches, while ensuring the schools do not go over budget. The funds are being transferred to facilities and transportation to fund one-time expenses such as additional building improvements. Funds may also be PPE in cleaning supplies, in contractual services in support of reopening. Can I get a roll call, Veronica?
Consideration and action to approve a budget transfer from multiple departments to facilities and transportation for FY21. Ms. Enriquez?
Yes.
Ms. Santiago?
Yes.
Mr. Jimenez?
Yeah.
Mute. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Carlisle?
Yes.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent, motion passes. Moving on to the next one. Consideration and action to authorize the district to enter into a lease agreement of up to 25 years with first right of refusal to acquire property. The authorization is to negotiate with the owners for lease space for district administrative and/or academic programs, including but not limited to the Chelsea Opportunity Academy and the Intergenerational Literacy Program. Item number 21 SC 44. Explanation: in November 2019, the school committee authorized the district to enter into a lease agreement for up to 10 years for a space for the relocation of the Chelsea Opportunity Academy and the Intergenerational Literacy Program. Since the date, the staff have issued 2 requests for proposals, but have not been able to find an optimal site with a 10-year term. Staff is requesting that the school committee modify the parameters for the potential lease, including allowing a term of up to 25 years, increasing the allowment uses so that other programs or classrooms could potentially be located there, and requesting the first right of refusal to acquire the property should it become available. And any purchase would require a separate action of the school committee and city council should the property arise in the future. Roll call, Veronica?
Before we have the roll call, I had a question about this.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Jimenez.
Yeah, I'm curious around the section B here around increasing the allowable uses so that other programs or classrooms could be located there. I just wonder if you could expand on that around, like what the thinking might be around that. I think this is exciting, so I'm just curious to learn more about it.
So thank you, Member Jimenez. We wanted to leave that language flexible because there, again, like at central office here at City Hall, we're in tight quarters. So we are leaving that optional and giving us the flexibility to be creative in this space. And I will let Ms. Lamboy comment as well.
Thank you. And with the social distancing, we've really been incredibly pressed this year. And with the new resources that are becoming available to help us address the gaps, the Easter monies, and we're hiring new staff, that space is going to be even more and more stressed. So as the superintendent said, having some flexibility to be creative when we see a property to identify what might fit really well there, I think that'll open a lot of doors. Also in the report, we talked about that there's a lot of large floor plate spaces in Chelsea, and we thought we might be constraining the offers that we were getting by, having a narrow band of square footage. So we would be open to a wider array of square footage.
Got it. That's really helpful. And I'm just out of curiosity, I think I know the answer to this question. Do we currently lease any space? Or is like all of our schools are district owned, I think, right? Or do we have any kind of lease spaces?
The only space we lease right now is where our buildings and grounds is located on Garish Street.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other questions before we move on to the roll call?
Yeah, this is Ms. Santiago. It's sort of like a comment on how important this is. Again, appreciate the observation to have some flexible language as we continue to look around for this new space and understanding how we need to expand and how we're growing. I know that I just wanted to lift that the ILP program as well, including with the COA, these efforts have been just really celebrated. I've been receiving like immense feedback about the ILP in the last few weeks, which I'm really happy about because it's a program that I keep hearing good things and need to learn more about, and it seems to be really successful. And so I'm glad that we're considering the ILP, also with the COA, thinking about how we're expanding opportunities for our families and our students in the district. So this is really exciting. And just, yes, thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, Ms. Santiago. Any other questions or comments before we move on? No? Okay, Veronica, roll call.
Consideration and action to authorize the district to enter into a lease agreement of up to 25 years with the first right of refusal to acquire property. The authorization is to negotiate with the owners for lease space for district administrative and/or academic programs, including but not limited to the Chelsea Opportunity Academy and the Intergenerational Literacy Program. Ms. Enriquez?
Yes.
Ms. Santiago?
Yes.
Mr. Jimenez?
Yes.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Carlisle?
Yes.
6 in the affirmative and 3 absent.
6 in the affirmative, 3 absent, motion passes. Okay, thank you. Next, we move on to communications. Seeing none. Does anybody have any further announcements, comments they'd like to make before we adjourn?
I have an announcement, if I can, Madam Vice Chair. First, I want to thank the youth, the young people who came out both days. They came out for the first set of vaccinations at the Chelsea Senior Center 2 weeks ago, and also for the staff from the school. Delaney and school nurse and a couple of teachers from the school came by to help us out. As well as want to thank the parents and the students who came out also for Earth Day. It was the same day. And we had a great showing of city, community people coming out and supporting both events. So I want to thank everybody for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. Yes.
Quick announcement as well. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that the Chelsea City Council joined us in passing a resolution in favor of the Fair Share Amendment this past Monday. So I just want to thank the members of the council who were supportive of the resolution. The vote passed in a 6-3 vote with 2 members absent from the meeting. So I just wanted to thank Councilor Garcia for introducing the motion, introducing the resolution. I apologize, and the other councilors who voted for it. I think it's really important in making sure that we also have the council support in making sure that our schools are fully funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Anyone else?
Mrs. Carlisle here would like to say a couple of words.
Sure, Mrs. Carlisle, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to wish all the mothers in the city of Chelsea and all the mothers in the school department a very happy Mother's Day, and be safe, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The same to you and to.
Happy Mother's Day to all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and happy Nurses Day. Same. Thank you, Dr. Albeda, for sending out that recognition as well. Always very thoughtful with these days. And hearing from Mr. Delady just how much our nurses are working overtime per usual. So lots of gratitude to our team and to the district for all the extra care and love they've given to our kids. Appreciate it.
Mr. Jimenez, you want to have
yeah, also just wanted to mention to all of our educators, happy Teacher Appreciation Week as well. Yeah, just thank you all so much for all the work that you have been doing this year and all the work that you are doing.
Thank you. Mr. Yes, Henry?
Last information, I guess. Wednesday on the 12th this month, we're going to have the charter review be meeting at City Hall, City Council chambers. And I believe it's 6 p.m. So it's a good time to come and see the charter review, get involved, and see what type of changes we are considering changing on the in the charter. So it's Wednesday, the 12th of May at 6 o'clock. City Hall.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Actually, I was going to look that up, so thank you. You saved me going on the website. Thank you very much. Anyone else? None? Well, I wanted also to thank Dr. Albeda for always keeping us so updated on everything that's happening and everything that's going on. Your emails are so helpful and everything and keeping us up to date with so much is happening, and it's being in this pandemic and not being at the City Hall and so involved as we usually were, being there in person. It's great to be able to get at least the emails and get all the information filtered to us to keep us up to date on what's going on. So I want to thank you very much for that. And I want to thank all the teachers and all the staff and all the students getting back to school full time and making this all work. I think that goes from all of us, from the whole school committee, to all of you for making our job a lot easier and for working so hard to make this work. Thank you. And thank you for your patience with me. I'm sorry, I was in the middle of trying to read all this and my new puppy was nipping at my hands, and she bites a little hard sometimes. So I'm trying to read and she's biting on my hands. But thank you so much and hope you have a good evening. And can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
Second. We adjourn at 8:42 p.m. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.